Hey everybody, this is Fennicat, or Anna if you prefer, and today I wanted to take you through my process of making my very first lamb cake. My grandma apparently used to make these all the time using the traditional mold, but I'm difficult and I wanted to do it the difficult special way where I have to sculpt everything by hand. This is also my first time ever using fondant or doing any sort of cake sculpting, so I learned a lot while making this, and I really hope you enjoy getting to watch the process. Let's go! I actually had to purchase a few things to do this project, namely this pan because I have not made a square cake since forever. I also bought a boxed cake mix because I'm lame and do not have the time nor the energy to devote to making my own. After it was all well mixed, I poured all of the ribbony goodness into the tray, which I greased thoroughly using vegetable oil. I then beat the ever-living heck out of it against my stove until it had settled, and it was ready for the stove. While it was baking, I went ahead and got out all of my Rice Krispie treats and started smushing them together to make the shapes of the limbs and the head. Also, touching sticky marshmallow is a very unpleasant feeling. I ended up making a head and 3 visible limbs. The front right leg, which was super tucked, the front left leg, which was semi-tucked, and the back leg, which was fully out. I ended up using a lot of these for this, and I made the neck of the head especially dense, but I still ended up having to come back later in order to get the head to work right, which you'll see. While our freshly squeezed body parts were chilling in the freezer, it was time to actually take the cake out of the oven. I wasn't sure if it ran the risk of deflating or not, but I went ahead and propped it up on its side anyway to make sure. Afterwards, I was able to set it alone, and I managed to get to work on the fondant. Which, no, I also did not make fondant on my own, okay? I just bought it. I actually wanted modeling chocolate, but I couldn't find that anywhere, and I didn't trust myself to make it. So I just bought it. But I did dye a couple of the colors myself. After I finished mixing it, I realized I actually made a bit too much pink fondant, and it goes a lot farther than I thought it did. But I ended up doing the hooves, I saved some later for the insides of the ears, and then whatever I had left over, I actually ended up using for flowers. I then got to adding fondant to the rest of the legs. I did my best to make them look both fluffy and woolly, because I know sometimes curls don't really translate very well to hard, blocky shapes. But I think I did a pretty okay job. Like, you'll be able to actually tell the difference between the frosting and the fondant, which is mainly what I wanted. Also, I found out you should not put these in the freezer after they're done because they get condensation, and then once they get a tiny bit wet, the fondant gets a little sticky, and it's super annoying to work with afterwards. I then started adding fondant to the head, which was arguably not the longest part to do, but it was the part that required the most detail. I started by just slapping on like a base coating of white, and I didn't really care what the back looked like too much because I would be covering it with frosting. But after I had all the bases of it covered, I then started sculpting it by adding, more definition to the face. I started curving the ears so they weren't just flat pieces that stuck out to the side. Earlier I had actually made 2 little blue fondant marbles when I was busy making the pink dye. It actually ended up being too big and I had to cut one of them in half and then reshape them into marbles again. I then went ahead and started preparing my icing, which I did actually make myself. It's buttercream icing. I ended up needing 3 servings of this. I thought I'd only need 2, and at some point at like 4 in the morning, you'll see me come back defeated when I have to make another bowl. Next up, I trimmed the cake, split it in 2, and started preparing the base. My original plan after the cake was assembled was to make a Rice Krispie cylinder that went down into the base and had 3 pegs coming out of it in order to attach the head. That ended up not working in splitting the cake. I still tried to make it work, but in the end, I ended up having to actually cut out a larger section of cake around the neck and basically just using the last of the Rice Krispie treats that I had in order to make a whole new base for the head to sit on. A cylinder was just too narrow for it to actually work. It had to be like a square block. Before then though, I would already try and start sculpting the cake, and I did like how it looked. I did have a bit of trouble getting the limbs to actually look proportional on the cake, and I knew it would fluff up more after the frosting was added, but it was really hard to picture, and I ended up having to actually break the front left leg in half in order for it to actually fit in right. What really made me want to change out the cylinder though was that the head was so far into the cake that I was going to have trouble frosting it. Eventually I made a new base, I propped it up, and then I covered it up a bit with some fondant in order to hide my scars, and it really worked! I ended up liking it a lot more this way, and I felt comfortable moving on to the fun process of actually frosting the cake. I ended up using a 2D frosting tip, which was normally used for like roses and stuff like that, and I just gave them some cute little swirlies, make it look like she was all fluffy and floofy. I thought 2 servings of frosting would have been fine, like after piecing it all together, and it would still have enough for actually frosting it. Turns out I was completely wrong. I didn't even get to finish the head, let alone add all the little details. So, yeah, I have to go make more. While I was waiting for the butter to actually get soft, I went ahead and used my remaining fondant to make some flowers, and then I got fed up with that really fast, decided I'd pipe the rest of them on. And then, around 4:49 a.m., I finally had enough frosting to finish all of the fleece and actually do all the little piping details. I ended up making some cute little foliage for her to be sitting on, I added a little ribbon, and I gave her a flower crown. And I was really happy with how all that came out. And then, at 5:03 a.m., I had just finished putting on the remaining touches, and she was complete. I painted her face to give her a little more life. She was given a painted nose, lips, cheeks, and eyeballs, and I really think that it helped her stand out. I was so happy with how she came out. I didn't even care that I'd have to have the whole kitchen cleaned in an hour so I'd actually make it to sunrise mass at church. I just was so happy with how she looked. I actually threw out my back in the process of making this. I was that tired. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching me fumble around with cake after 8 overnight hours. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun making it, and I feel like I learned so much making this, and I really hope to get to work with fondant and stuff in the future. I want to get more practice in so that I can make a wedding cake for my best friend. So I have hopefully more cake videos coming. I don't know. It's not really my thing, but I just enjoy doing it. And for anybody curious, this is what she looked like after we actually started cutting into the cake. Again, thank you so much for watching, you guys. Bye!